It's not a movement that is declaring against family and we're anti-children. It's about empowerment. It's about justice and the right to make informed decisions. If people have the right to have children, I also have the right to not have children.
Yeah.
You know, we're going towards Human Rights Month, and I'm hearing so many adverts and things saying, you know, you have the right to dream, you have the right to choice. Why is it that certain dreams are invalidated because there's a certain narrative we want to push? You know, under the Child Free by Choice movement, I want to position it as a human rights and social economic issue and bring the conversation to the table that while there are other conversations happening, Child Free by Choice is also at the table. That
Welcome to an all-new episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Oluchi B. Hey guys, and welcome to another exciting episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Oluchi B, aka the elusive pundit. Honey, how are you feeling?
I am great, thanks. How are you? Very excited to be here.
Me too. So today in studio, we're joined by Reneiloe. We're going to be speaking about a very, very important topic. Reneiloe is a 30-plus child-free by choice ambassador. She dubs herself, what do you dub yourself again?
The pioneer of Child Free by Choice South Africa.
Exactly. And I actually love the fact that I have her here in the studio just to give a bit of a background between myself and Reneiloe's relationship. So I met you, I think, around 2020, 2021. It was for Sundays Are Us with Portia, and at the time you had a different lifestyle. You were a modest closet influencer. You were also heavy on the Bible, and at the time you were someone who was actively looking for a role in the traditional sense that you wanted to get married, you wanted to have children, and you wanted to embrace the traditional lifestyle. And then for some reason you disappeared off of IG for some time, and then when I joined TikTok last year, I found you, and I found a different woman on the other side of TikTok, and you were the ambassador, official one for South Africa, the pioneer for the 30-plus child-free movement. And then in the midst of me finding you and trying to look for ways in which we can collaborate and have this conversation, obviously because I've always been fascinated by the work that you're doing and your willingness to be open about the work that you're doing. And then as we were having conversations and I started doing research to just try to find an angle as to how we're going to have a conversation, then I found this video of you. It was trending. It was sort of like you having like a crash out moment. You and Maporisa there. Did a lot for this country.
Yo, I think I'm going through a season of being overly emotional. I think I'm going through something like, you know, I'm just like thinking, I bumped into an ex like 2 days ago, and he broke up with me because he was like, my standards are too high. He didn't say it like that at the time. Now he just explained to me that he was not the type of guy that I want to be with because or you know, he used to tell me that, you know, you're such a wonderful woman, you're gonna make such a great wife, you're gonna, you know, but he wasn't ready for the type of relationship, right? And then like, so he's like, he wasn't ready, but then he tells me he has a baby, and I'm like, oh, you had a baby? I wanted to be a wife and have a baby. Like, what's the difference? I guess men are more willing now to be fathers than husbands, and it breaks my heart because I'm like, God, I'm out here wanting to be a wife and settle down, and I don't want to be like I'm comparing myself to people, but like there are plenty of women out here that can find somebody or was found by somebody, you know. It's wedding season now. Like, I just got my lashes done, can you all see? Because I've been invited to 3 different weddings. Like this weekend I'm going to a wedding, next weekend I'm going to a wedding, December I'm going to a wedding. And I won't lie, these type of things, I'm so happy for people. Like, I'm the first to congratulate you and stuff, but sometimes it is a bit hurtful when you think about like, God, is there something wrong with me? Because I'm the common denominator in all these things. I'm the one that people are breaking up with, or I'm the one that nobody wants to be in a committed relationship with me. So it just makes me wonder, like, you know, I guess these prayers that I'm praying, like, God, keep him away from me if he's not for me, are really working, because it's like I'm not being seen. Like, people are like not seeing me. People are not seeing me. I'm even at the stage where I'm thinking, you know what, I think I need to just give up on dating. I need to give up on I don't know, because I've heard people say once you stop looking for love, that's when you find it. So I'm like, maybe I should just stop looking. Stop looking.
You're just going down.
Exactly. And I was like, and I actually like the fact that you were like, I wonder if it's because I'm like getting closer to my periods, because that's the first thing I always say to myself every time I'm emotional. I was like, when are my periods coming? Because they definitely coming. And for me, when I then had like a broader context on the human being that you were, traditional wife looking for the domestic life, to now being child free by choice, I looked at that moment as like a climax. Like there was something that was breaking down, and it was now time for you to make a decision as to what are you going to do. Are you going to continue with the past, or are you going to move forward and embrace this evolution that was being afforded to you?
So yeah, we did meet during that time, and I would like to more emphasize on, it's not that I'm not living that life anymore, because I was child free, like in the sense of without child, but my mindset was more focusing on what I didn't have, what I was without, instead of focusing on what I do have. Am I content with my life? What space and blessings do I have in that life? And you know, that time when I was trending, it was almost a year and a half ago, but I only really got people commenting on that about 6 months ago or so. And I'm like,
I only found the
why
video like
are
6
people
months
asking
ago.
if
I
I'm
swear to
okay?
God.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, people are asking me, why am I okay and everything. And I'm like, what are they referring to? Then to go see, oh, okay, there was this video. And yes, I think moments of vulnerability like that is where we get clarity, because I was going through a period, literally physically going close to my period. And at the time it was like wedding season, so like all these reminders of what you don't have are always faced as in our faces as women. And we focus on that and focus on what we don't have and what we're going to lose, instead of focusing on what you do have. What can you gain? What value do you have? What impact are you giving? And what are you influencing?
I love that. Can you just take me to some of the decision process regarding that era, in terms of, now I'm seeing that whatever I wanted is not working out, I need to make a decision. What was some of your thinking process?
So that definitely needs to go back to when I was a teenager.
Okay.
Because the decision that I made at 15, and I
Oh,
didn't
before
know.
before we go there, I'm just talking about just
That
like
specific
that
moment.
specific, what led you to that moment?
What led me to that moment is constantly desiring something, and it's out of my control of when I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
It's out of my control of how to define it. You know, there's so many things that happen in life and so many circumstances, whether you're in a good relationship or not, whether it's toxic or not. You know, what are you willing to sacrifice? I really believe that life is essentially living in sacrifice, but you need to understand, what is your sacrifice? What is your responsibility, and which one are you willing to pick up? You know, which burden are you willing to pick up? If I'm going to keep crying about not having children or not being married, and I think the emphasis of that people get wrong about me, it's not that I was crying about not having children. My emphasis is, I've always valued marriage, the nuclear family, and companionship. So within that, like I said, it needs to go back to 15, because it does start there. Because when I was 15, I decided I didn't want to have children outside of marriage.
Okay.
So from 15 to 30, that decision stuck with me. And then I had to decide, am I going to continue with this, or force myself essentially to create this family, you know, and risk maybe sacrificing my future and potential. And that's where the climax is that what am I willing to risk?
Exactly. And it's life is always gonna come at you like that. You have a specific decision that you've made for yourself. You want that decision to happen in your life, whether it's a business, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a career that you are trying to build, and then things happen as life would happen, and then ultimately there's like a crash out point where you have to make that active decision as to, are you going to continue in this road even though you're not seeing fruits, or are you then going to turn your life around and look for where it's easy or where it's acceptable for you to go?
And especially where you have the resource.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we make decisions and aspirations based on external circumstances and not look within.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad then we spoke about the climax, what led to the decision-making process and what was happening in and around that time, because I just felt like it was going to lay a great foundation for you to sort of like have a chronology as to where you've been and where you're going. So getting into the second segment, which is your life, I want to talk about your childhood. You grew up very well in terms of your life. You grew up in Sandton. You're the original North girl.
I'm the
You
original.
grew up with your mother. Can you just tell us a bit about your childhood?
So I cannot say I have bad experiences, and I think a lot of the time people like to invalidate people's realities because it might not be the majority. So like you mentioned, I was born in Park Lane Clinic in Houghton. I'm 32, so I was born in 92 before apartheid. My mother decided, I'm going to have my child in a white clinic. I'm going to live in the suburbs. And even with her decision, she was already seen as a traitor against the black movement. So being born during that time and then being born in Sandton in the suburbs, that is my reality. You know, and I grew up with a mother that was a single mother that had the money and still has the money. But there were certain gaps and cracks within growing up. You know, the times where my mother couldn't fetch me from certain things at school because she had to work, because she was late. She couldn't be two people at one time. And she took me to some of the best schools in that time, you know, Rivonia Primary, Bryanston High. So I cannot say I've had a struggled upbringing. And I think that also puts me in the position to say that it's not only money that raises children.
That's
because
true.
I was raised in maybe not upper class money, rich, but we were middle class. She could afford having me and do it single-handedly.
You also say that you are the only child.
And I am the only child. So in that as well, my mother also decided one and done because of her experience. And I've had open conversations with her to ask her how it was. And growing up, I remember not necessarily knowing that having a father was abnormal or something, but seeing it, like on Father's Day at school, you have to make arts and crafts, and there's no one to give it to. You know, being reminded at school when there's two parents to fetch a child and you're still waiting after school for your mother to fetch you. There's just those small elements that are intrinsic in a child's development and their growth that we take for granted. And that a child doesn't know that until they become a self-aware adult.
That's true.
And that's where I am at. My mother's strength and resilience to raise me the way she could and the way she wanted to, and step out and say, I want to give my child a certain lifestyle, which means that there's things I'm going to have to sacrifice. And even in parenting, she had to make a lot of sacrifices.
Is there a duality with your mother that you understand now? Like some of the stuff, because you grew up in a single parent household, you couldn't be fetched at school certain times. Was there a duality that you came to a later realization in life in terms of this person can exist in this with these flaws, but this person can also exist in this in this flawless way as well?
There definitely is a duality, like I said, realizing at school that our family was also different. And then within my childhood, I met my father when I was 13. That was the first time I did meet him. And it was my mom's initiative to arrange that meeting. And the beauty that I like my mom for in terms of how she raised me is she never once like bad talked him or anything like that. She gave me facts. She used to say, he lives here, he does this. You will meet him eventually someday. You will experience your father. She never laid down to me, this is what he did to me, and put it in a negative sense. She always was open to the fact that he has his own side to
Yeah.
speak of,
True.
and the door was open,
Yeah.
and at age 13, through a mutual friend, she was able to arrange that meeting.
Mm.
And I was so excited to meet him at that time. Like, I've always dreamed of, oh, my father, etc., like that.
Exactly.
And I remember he asked me, where do we want to meet? And we went to the Zone. And that was when the Zone was still new, with Sun Goddess and all these other stores there. And we bought it. I made him pay. I was like, 2,000 Rand jeans,
You
this, that,
better.
and the other. Like, but as well as it wasn't like an expectation for him to pay. That's just how I knew living. My mother gave me everything I wanted as well.
Yeah.
So I just assumed that's how parenting is as well. It's
Exactly.
equal.
Exactly.
It's a duality of, okay, if my mother can do this, my father can and should do it.
Yeah.
And I would say that's when a lot of the emotional turmoil started. And it needed to happen, though,
Yeah.
because I only had one side.
True.
Where, when you're asking, did I realize the duality? I had to realize the duality in terms of, it should not maybe be this way. You know, my mother also has her sacrifices.
Yeah.
My mother also has her challenges. And then how does that look for me? And then meeting my father was when the emotional disrupt started, and I would say the daddy issues started to be birthed. And we throw around daddy issues and the father wound so often
Yeah.
that we don't take it seriously, that it's a serious thing.
Please say
and
that
it's
again.
real.
Can you please say that again?
We don't take father issues seriously, and father wounds and daddy issues.
Exactly.
And children only really realize it if they are self-aware enough during their teenage years. And most people only realize it as an adult, if ever at all.
Exactly.
That this is a wound, and there's not, that you couldn't control how this wound came about.
Yeah.
You know, whether you were conscious of it at a young age or not. And there's certain elements in development in children that are going to be lacking because you only have one-sided parenting.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't be two people at the same time.
Exactly. And I wanted to just find out from you then, just around, we're going to get into the father wound right now, because I like the conversation about the father wound, but there's also the mother wound on the other side of the spectrum as well. And before the emotional understanding of your life, in terms of you grew up in this nirvana with your mom up until you were 8 years old, you were very much sheltered into the bigger reality of your life. And then at the ages of 8, then you meet your 13. At the age of 13, then you meet your father, and then there's like a new wave of emotions that actually do get opened up. Are you in a position now, before you met your father, we're going to get into the father, to look at that life and see if there were any issues that you didn't know that existed in your life that you had to find out later?
You know, I wouldn't say I have a mother wound or anything like that. Like you asked, do I understand duality? I understand what she had to go through.
Yeah.
I think the one thing is the space to feel what you're going through.
Yeah.
Because I had one parent, sometimes I felt as if I couldn't offload certain emotions. Because I'm like, okay, she has her own burdens. And, you know, I remember when my grandfather passed away when I was 15. So it was about 2 years after I met my father. And there were times where I even felt like, I don't know if my mom knows, but I even felt like I couldn't cry in front of her. And it wasn't because of her.
Yeah.
It was because I'm like, there's only us two. One of us is going to have to be strong.
Yeah.
And the irony is that she's also thinking the same thing.
Exactly.
And as a parent, that is her responsibility. But you become parentified. And I've heard a lot of child-free women speak about parentification in terms of siblings.
Yeah.
But as an only child, you become parentified in the sense that you have to grow up quicker.
Yeah.
And not only child, as a child from a single parent household, you do have to grow up quicker.
That's
There's
true.
certain things I had to learn by the time I was a teenager or whatever, because when my mom is not available and she's working, I have to know how to take care of myself. You know, whether if that's a negative or a positive, because I'm very resourceful and I can rely on self.
Yeah.
But another thing is also, I find I shy away from relying on other people because of the disappointments I've faced in life.
Yeah.
You know, I always speak of my mom in a high regard because she opened my life up, or my mindset, to option. From a very young age, she used to tease me and say, "Don't make me a mother before. Don't make me a grandmother. I mean, don't make me a grandmother before I'm 60. Don't make
Yeah.
me a grandmother if you are not married. I'm going to leave you. I'm going, you know." And
Yeah.
it was a joke that I'm going to be there saying coochie coochie and go off to my MSC cruise and leave you behind because you didn't listen to what I did.
Exactly.
And the beauty of that mindset is that she didn't just say don't do what I did.
Yeah.
She actually tried to build it in me that yes, I made a mistake. I decided this, but that's not your decision. You don't have to do that. And within the decision at 15 and going forward and my childhood, I always knew I didn't want to be a single mother. And for me, that meant volunteering to have a child outside of marriage. And then secondly, it also meant that if I did not get married, I would never have children.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even adopt, even if I had the money,
Yeah.
because I don't want to volunteer for the life that I was brought into.
Okay.
And now we see with the evolution of how marriage dynamics have worked. And I don't even think it's an evolution. I just think it's more transparent that we have single mothers that are married.
Exactly. Okay. And now going back into the relationship with your father, after that Rosebank situation, did you guys continue having a relationship, or did you guys go back to ground zero?
It wasn't a ground zero, but it was very much inconsistent. You know, I don't know him that well enough to really say what his character is, but from what he showed me is that he has a facade. There's a certain image that he wants to be seen as. And because he is a public figure and part of the justice system, you know, if I had to name drop, some people would actually know him. And, you know, I remember during that time after 13, the next time I probably spoke to him was around the age 16 and 18 when we reached out for finances, matric dances, everything coming up, empty promises, I'm going to send you this, I'm going to do that, and it never happening. And my mother having to pick up the pieces of that relationship. And my constant need for that validation, because it was an expectation, because I was like, I'm here, I know I have two parents. The one parent is definitely living above my expectation. This other parent, they should also follow those words, but you need to realize that you can't force someone to love you.
Exactly.
They need to love you on their terms, not on their terms necessarily, but they need to choose to love you. And it was very much an up and down, and getting to the age of like after matric and having to see what my options are of studying, I had to reach out to him again, and I did reach out to him again. And it was the same experience. Revealing myself at his workplace. It was I've always felt like the relationship between my father and I is like I'm his side chick. And I never understood it. I'm like, how is your daughter your side chick?
Some
And
people
that's
know
how
you exist, but people don't know you exist at the same time.
There wasn't some people. It was I introduced myself, and it was like, but I thought he only had 2 children.
Oh, wow.
Or I thought he only had a 10-year-old, and here comes this 20-year-old saying that this is his child.
Imagine.
And that's the position I had to be in and still am in. And there's certain areas in my personal life that I'm still fighting it, because I believe in the principle of it. It's, you know, people like to say, oh, get over those emotions because it's been 20 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
We have no right
We
to
can't.
tell people
We
how
can't.
to deal with their trauma.
I mean, I hated the whole Samizi and Bahumi situation, because it speaks to that. And I will never understand it, because up until both my parents dropped dead and my mom passed away recently, I still needed my parents, and I still called them for things. So for me, as long as you're here alive, honey, you're my parent, and I have the right to call you at any given time.
Yes, parenthood is a lifetime responsibility. A lot of us, and I see a lot of men think this way, that it ends at 18, it ends at 21, it ends at whatever. So at some point, you treat parenthood like it's a tub of yogurt.
Yeah.
Once it's expired, you discard it.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. Even at 30, I can go there and ask for my father's attention, etc. Because the irony is that parents then at a certain age then expect children to become their retirement plan and expect you to look after them. When if my age of parenthood expires, then it should be the same for you.
Amen.
You
Amen.
should also not be able to knock on
Yeah.
my door for help.
Exactly. We're not even going to get into that because that's a whole lot of black tags and all of those things. So, in summation, what would you say, according to you, has been like some of the main themes with your father? Is it abandonment, trust,
neglect,
neglect?
trust, responsibility, and accountability.
Oh, I love accountability.
You know, in the right to parent and the right to decide what you want to do, you also need to add space for accountability. If you decide to do something,
Yeah.
there will be someone that will hold you accountable for it.
Exactly.
And you cannot try control how that accountability comes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sad part that I see with my father, is that he wants to erase over the years that he wasn't there.
Don't
and
all
continue
parents always
forward.
try to do that? They gaslight
Yes.
you out of your experience that you had. You're like, "Yeah, this was my reality."
Like, were you there when I was sitting at school until 6:30 in winter, when my mother was stuck in traffic?
Exactly.
What's your explanation on that? You know, they want forgiveness without restitution.
No.
You can't necessarily fully forgive someone if you don't deal with how you hurt them
Yeah.
and why you hurt them, so they
Exactly.
can understand.
Yeah. You say you are a late bloomer. Were you dating in like your teenage years?
Can we call high school dating? I'm kidding. I mean, yeah,
We
I
don't
was.
count those guys, honey. They don't count.
You know, if
Anybody
you-
who didn't hoy cows into the household doesn't count,
And
according to me. Unless
according
I
to
saw
me
some cows
as
coming
well.
through, I don't know you. And
And
you better
according
not
to
be
me as
claiming you
well.
know me in the streets. I don't know you.
And the fact that I don't have children, there's no evidence.
Oh, hello,
Please,
honey. I
there's
love
no
that
physical
even
evidence
more.
of us ever
I
being
love
together.
that even more, honey. I'm Mariah Carey. I don't know you. You know
Girl.
this guy? No, I've never seen this man in my life. That's me, and that's what allowed me to move forward in life. So
So I did date, let's just call it dating, back in high school. Had my first kiss maybe when I was like, 16, 17.
Yeah.
So at the time, it was like I'm a late bloomer, because there was still a childlike, and I still think there is a childlike demeanor about myself because of
me too.
not engaging in certain activities at
Yeah.
a certain time. But I definitely felt the peer pressure at the time. I remember even just getting into puberty, I started becoming curvy and all that, and the girl with the big behind, and
okay,
you know,
yeah.
apple bottom and all that.
Baby Alfred.
Like, you know, bootylicious type of thing. I was that girl.
I'm sure you even had that
Hey.
name on Mixing. Were you Reneiloe or what?
Yes, I even had the apple bottom jeans. I had fat couture. I had juicy couture.
Boots
I was
with the
all of it.
fur.
Everything. I was all of it. So I was essentially in the dating scene of getting the attention, and also liking the attention, and maybe not liking my body, because I was also teased because I grew up in white schools.
Yes, yes.
I was different to the
And especially
everyday
at
child
the
around
time,
me.
honey. And especially at the time. Like, I know you clocked into the white schools like in the early 90s and stuff.
Towards the late 90s. I went to primary school in 99, but even then I was in Sunning Hill Creche.
Exactly. And for me, I went in the 2000s. The racism was still there. I don't know if it was because it was Cape Town, but I was like, hello, because I did my primary in the, the local schools, and then I did my high school. And then I got there and I was like, what do you mean you guys are still racist? I thought Mandela sorted the issue out. And I was just like so shocked that people still wanted to be racist.
Yeah, I also really learned about racism in high school. And even though I spent 7 years of my life going to white primary schools, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Although there was a conscious feeling or intangible feeling of that we are different. And even with dating, because there was only a few black boys available, I was attracted to both white and black and Indian and whatever, and growing up developing which side is my preference.
Yeah.
And then also understanding that, what validation do I want? Is it in my body? Is it in my beauty? Is it for my value in my mind? And developing that. And as we have now, we've got decentering men, etc. So dating has always been a up and down and putting boundaries and realizing what I want, not the expectation of what it should look like.
Exactly. And I wanted to just make an example about myself, obviously, because of the trust issues that I had with my parents. When I started growing up and becoming a teenager, I was relationshiping from a distance. Like, I like you, but I have like this huge wall between me and you, so you can't get in. So I never had men at the center at all. They were actually a bay at a distance.
So I would say I did or have elements of centering men, because at a young age I did like the attention and the validation of, because you have a curvy body, you're beautiful. But because of my relationship or trauma with my father, I always never trusted men. I always let me get out of the situation before he hurts me. Let me detach myself emotionally, and having certain situations happen and know that in my mind I've broken up with you 2 months before we physically broke up. That's how I've always operated, and not understanding what were those boundaries and where did they come from, and if they were good or bad. And I do believe that certain traumas do also help us to foster positive results.
Amen.
Because
Please,
I did learn to
thank you.
detach because of my trauma.
Thank you.
It's helped me now, as in 30, that I can be detached. I can see when toxic is coming towards me and decide, am I walking in it or am I walking away from it? Am I fight or flight, or am I facing it?
Amen.
And how will I face it? Am my emotions going to be part of that? Am I going to, the same way men demand sexual encounter, what is my demand?
Oh, I love that, because for me, and that's what I always tell Takashi all the time, you need to go into a situation knowing what your demand is. What do you want? What's going to make you feel like you're benefiting something from that relationship, be it a job, a friendship, or a relationship?
Exactly.
I'm heavy on that.
And I think that's where the operation of decentering men and women empowerment and femininity comes from, is that you need to look after self first before you can serve other people.
And then early relationships, and then later on, as in your adult life, were relationships different? And is there like a specific relationship that changed your narrative about relationship?
So I was very much, I want to be the housewife, I want to be whatever, I intrinsically do believe that women, as women, maybe speak for myself, why are we working till our bones are frail and crying out there? I want to be treated like a princess. I want to be treated like a queen.
Amen.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a housewife, etc. like that. But then you also have to realize, what sacrifices are you going to make? So I think one of the most pivotal relationships for me, and I don't have anything bad to say about the dynamic of it.
I love that you always say that as a disclaimer, because I always feel like it's important.
Yeah, it's important, because people be like, oh, you're bitter because you didn't marry, So like you said earlier,
we don't give
fake
a F.
like you said earlier, the fake engagements. So
oh my God, no!
Like, I did a fat and sit. I was fat and sittering for 2 years. I did enjoy it. I also had 2 jobs. I was
Miss
balancing
Independent Part
things.
1.
I was
Trad Wife Part 2.
I was in the house cooking, cleaning, starching,
working
shirts,
harder than
everything.
before. I don't even know what that is. I had to Google when I was watching your interview with Reason TV. I was like, what does starching shirts mean? I've always been the lazy, undomesticated girl, and I've always told men, like, you know what, if you're looking for a domestic worker, honey, I'm not the one.
That's
or
not
the 2
me.
or the 3.
I did it. I mean, there's a spray and a powder, and I learned. Okay, so
I didn't
you
know.
spray when the collar is slightly damp, and then you iron it, and then it dries, and it dries up to be starch like
You
that.
are really pushing the slavery.
Hey, I was there. I would ask, baby, what time you coming home, and he'd tell me 10 o'clock, and I'm still waiting up. I haven't eaten dinner yet, because we're gonna eat dinner together. And that relationship also made me realize that I do like companionship. I do like this dynamic. But what am I getting out of it? And there were struggles between romance, and I am a romantic person, where now I have to initiate going on dates, giving ideas, talking about certain conversations, talking about feelings, birthdays. It was just an every other day. And I'm like, I understand how to love, but do I understand how I want to be loved? Is this the right situation? He's telling me the right things. He even went to the audacity to go ask my mom.
Isbindi, girl.
Ask my mom for my hand
Isbindi.
in marriage and never buy a ring.
Oh, wow.
All I'm saying is the challenges that I faced during that time and having to decide and detach is why I am here today, and the boundaries that I have. I thank God it didn't happen,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be where I am now.
Exactly. Which leads us to sort of like the last segment. I wanted to then tell us, what is the child-free movement by choice according to you?
So according to me, I know I labored 30 plus whatever, but it's child-free by choice, because there is no age limit.
Yeah.
The only problem is, or where the distinction is you cannot be child-free by choice if you already have children.
Yeah.
So firstly, it is the active state of being child-free. You currently do not have children.
Yeah.
And then the foundation of it is the activity, the deliberate actions you do to remain in that state.
Yeah.
That it's not a movement that is declaring against family and we're anti-children. It's about empowerment. It's about justice and the right to make informed decisions. If people have the right to have children, I also have the right to not have children.
Yeah.
You know, we're going towards Human Rights Month, and I'm hearing so many adverts and things saying, you know, you have the right to dream, you have the right to choice. Why is it that certain dreams are invalidated because there's a certain narrative we want to push? You know, under the Child Free by Choice movement, I want to position it as a human rights and social economic issue and bring the conversation to the table, that while there are other conversations happening, Child Free by Choice is also at the table. That it's about reproductive rights and the rights of women and children, about economic independence and mobility, and also breaking generational cycles. Because in me deciding I don't want to continue having children because of X, Y, and Z, because of my trauma, because I have certain aspirations, I am then breaking patterns that I've seen in my family and in community. And I truly believe that you cannot be part of breaking a generational curse if you're going to continue that pattern.
Yeah.
So essentially, child free by choice is the choice, the active choice. It's not about your inability. It's not about if you are infertile. It's about, I may have the ability and I choose not to take it, and that is also my right. I have the space, apart from stigma, judgment, and coercion, and all the other external pressures, that I can decide to do this.
Okay. Thank you so much. I have never heard anyone explain something so beautifully. Like literally, I'm looking at my notes. I was like, literally, you covered everything that I wanted to talk about. But do you, on your side, believe that child free by choice movement is sort of like the new feminism?
I think it's an aspect and it's been accelerated by it. And the reason why I don't think it's part of the new feminism, because it started before feminism.
Yeah.
Now I'm really trying to identify historical pillars. And someone I did identify is Princess Mkabayi Kajama, which is part of the Shaka Zulu story, that if it wasn't for Princess Mkabayi deciding to remain unmarried and not have children and reject tradition, we wouldn't have Senza Nakona. We wouldn't have the Zulu nation as we see it now.
Exactly.
And that was in the 1700s. So the concept of it being a part of feminism, it is accelerated by feminism, but it's not defined by feminism, because then you're taking away the African aspect, that it is part of our culture. We have had the decision before. It has made history, and legacy goes beyond lineage.
Yeah.
So this is us reclaiming what other historical figures that are women have decided even before the rights of women were on the table to debate.
That's good. It's an addition to the feminine movement. It existed before. And then there's a new term now called decentering men, where women are said to be man bashing. How does the child free movement merge into that? Is it adjacent to the decentering man? Is it combined, put together? What's the relationship like between decentering man and the child free movement?
So I definitely think when we think of child free, it's multifaceted. So
Yeah.
there's many layers. You know, there's people that decide to be child free until marriage.
Yeah.
They delay it. There is people that decide to be dinks, which is dual income, no kids. So there's people that decide to be single and child free.
Yeah.
So it's multi-layered. And within the decentering of men, the one angle I definitely want to take is we need to start with self. You need to start centering yourself. When you're saying you're decentering men and I hate the things that men do to us and everything like that. But you're focusing on man. You're not focusing on self. You're not focusing on you as a woman of, okay, I see that the trend in the world or the society I'm in is baby mama culture, is single motherhood. How do I not place myself in the forefront of that and actually fight against it? I will never endorse baby mama culture and single motherhood because I don't think it's right, and I've been a product of it. So how do I address that? I address that by self-actualization, by the 4 pillars that I've identified of self-love, self-respect, self-discipline, and self-control. That once you realize these 4 pillars, there's so many other things that you will open up and unlearn what has been normalized, because we are living in a time where a lot of things have been normalized because the majority of people are doing it. So it's normal for a single parent household. It's normal for certain statistics because the majority is doing it. But is it really normal? Are the results of it normal? Are you really standing for the normal? So in decentering men, I would say it is parallel and it can be at the core of it. And we do need to highlight the consequences of certain actions and certain relationships, but it starts with yourself.
Okay. We didn't see like the child free movement when we were growing up. It was something that was not done, and everything was just you having children. And a lot of the women who have now been part of the child free movement actually did say that there was no thought process behind being a parent. People were just doing it because it was just a normal, which goes back to what you're talking about just now.
Yeah, and I would like to say as a blanket statement that I have rarely ever heard an unselfish reason to have children. A lot of the reasons to have children are based on selfish reasons. I want a mini-me. I want to love someone. I want unconditional love. I want companionship. Do you ever ask the child, what do they want? How would they would like to have lived? You know, and then people want to label child free as selfish when inherently it's selfless. You're taking responsibility of yourself first. You're treating yourself as a responsibility. That what kind of person will I be to society and what type of parent? If you know you're lazy, you're lazy. There's nothing wrong with admitting certain faults in yourself and bettering them. You know, so with representation, the beauty in my life I've had is I do have representation. I have a great aunt who is in her 90s, who is child-free by choice. But I don't think she would define it as child-free because she didn't know. And
I also didn't have a word for it until I met you. I was like, oh, that's what it's called. I was just like, I don't want to have children. I want to get married.
Exactly. So something doesn't necessarily exist unless you define it.
True.
So representation for me is extremely important, where you see celebrities like Tracy Ellis Ross that have been, let's say, the American
She's
side
been
of
sort of like the face,
the representation. And in South Africa, I want that representation to also show in our media, because so often we're seeing teenage pregnancy, we're seeing all these other dysfunctional dynamics, and saying dysfunction is normal because you endured it.
That's true.
And dysfunction is not normal just because you endured it.
Definitely
just because
not.
I also grew up like that, so my children are also going to grow up like that. No.
Exactly.
I don't want that for their future.
That's true. And then can you just quickly tell us what are the benefits of being child-free according to yourself?
So the benefits, the most important one that I have identified is personal autonomy. So to decide what you want to do with your life, the right that you have and the responsibility. Then there's economic mobility and independence. We know that children are expensive. In South Africa, it's been estimated it costs 90,000 rands a year to have a child.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that economic mobility and independence, personal well-being, personal growth, emotional and mental well-being. And that time is your greatest commodity. When you don't have children, you honestly have the time to focus on other areas, to develop other areas, to, quote, sacrifice on certain things to get to an end result and be consistent with that result. I can also spontaneously decide to travel or decide to move. So it's all of these different types of benefits that parents can say, I can also do that, but it's not the same.
Exactly.
It will never be the same.
I love that. And just the last question is just around the difference. You actually the one who said I must ask you this: child-free and childless.
Yes, there is a big difference between child-free and childless, although our state of realities are the same. Whether you're childless or child-free, if someone asks you, do you have children? You're going to say no. The difference comes in is that childless is not an active decision. It's by circumstance. Maybe there is fertility issues. Maybe you are not financially stable. You do desire to have children. You have trauma, etc. But it's out of your control whether you have children or not. You have not decided to actively control it. And then child-free is the proactive decision to control whether I have children or not. We both face stigma, but the one, child-free, is seen as selfish, incompetent, irresponsible, not a full woman. And childless is also seen the same, but childless are pitied. Childless are expected to hold on to the fantasy of a miracle.
Yeah.
But what if that miracle never comes?
Exactly. You know, not everyone's going to be Sarah.
Not
from the
everyone.
Bible.
And the irony is that every single person on this planet has been in a state of not having children.
Yeah.
Every single, but not every single person will experience having children.
Okay, no problem. Any final words, and then you can just give us your socials?
My final words is that I want to shape this discussion to be about motherhood is not a requirement. It is a choice. And within that choice, there needs to be informed decisions. We need to know the pros and the cons of motherhood. I urge mothers that are on the fence of speaking about their vulnerability to speak, because for other women, we need to see that side.
Exactly.
And then also in the decision to be child-free, speak about the stigma we have faced, because it's unfair to want to silence us because it makes other people feel triggered, or it makes other people feel like I'm bashing them. Life will always be a parallel of comparisons.
Yeah.
You just choose which life you will stand in and what you believe in.
Amen to that. And Queen, where can we find you?
So my socials, I have changed a lot of my tags. I was Reneiloe Matlaisa before, but on TikTok it is Child Free by Choice. On Instagram it is Child Free by Choice _SA. And also on Facebook, I'm developing my Facebook. I also have a WhatsApp account, a WhatsApp group, let's say about 180 women across South Africa and different African continent countries, that we can connect and speak about the stigma and whatever in a safe space. And a non-judgmental space.
Okay. We're looking forward to having your book, the ebook.
Yes.
We look forward to the events that you're going to do.
Yes.
And we look forward to you just taking this conversation to the next level, because I just feel like it should be like an open discussion. Every woman should be able to look at the different options that are available for their future.
Definitely. My main focus is driving that and launching Child Free by Choice South Africa officially. And one of the milestones will be a book, an ebook and a soft cover.
We love
launching it, getting material out there, because with topics you also have to give references of material, of research.
I had
And
a
that's
difficult time researching this because there
right,
wasn't
there's
material.
no reference point except for people's lived experiences, and lived experiences is also imparting of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I will be committing to getting out there and doing the groundwork. I want to be in schools giving this as part of the curriculum or life planning and life coaching.
Yeah.
I am in my final year of studying my marketing degree, as well as being certified as a life coach and mentor.
Love
so
it.
I'm committed to
Love
having
it.
this movement
Love it.
progress.
Okay, I'm sure we're going to be seeing you more on my show, because I love this conversation. And as soon as you drop the book, we're going to be there. We're going to be supporting all your events. Otherwise, Reneiloe, thank you so much for coming to Looks and Wisdom. Ninani Sendlini, please do comment. Please do subscribe. We have no further information to give to the masses. We shall see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
3, 2, 1, and cutting.
Thank you, honey.